On to part two of the data relays, and I'm really excited to be talking about this one because we're going to get into get and transform, which I'll talk about in a second here. I'll just kind of say high level, what is the question asking us to do? We have got a list of athletes and their performance across 3 rounds of competition in the 100 meters. And we are supposed to, according to the description here, find all the athletes in round 3, show what their race times were in all 3 rounds of competition, including with that their name and their country. So if you've been following along with the blog or we're doing the competition when we originally launched it, you'll notice this looks a lot like the data relays question from round 1. And that's very intentional. In round 1, and you can jump back to my blog from round 1, I said I was going to do this in a really manual way. It's going to be copying and pasting. It's fine because I'm just doing it once, but there are better ways to do it, especially if you're going to be doing a repeatable action, because instead of the next time your data changes, having to go back and do all the shaping and copying and pasting over and over again, we can find more efficient ways to do it, either with formulas or, as we're going to see in this case, with get and transform. So what is get and transform? This is a tool. Some people may be familiar with the term Power Query as well. They are the same thing. Power Query was an add-in we created back a few years ago for Excel 2013. It's now integrated here in Excel 2016. You can see it in the data ribbon, this area called get and transform. And the other thing I'll say is get and transform at a high level is a tool for gathering data, shaping it, and scrubbing it. So that can be filtering it, rearranging it, reformatting it to get it the way you want to start doing deeper analysis. For people in the database world, they might have heard the term ETL, which is extract, transform, load. You are extracting, getting data from some other source, transforming it, doing whatever changes you might need to do, scrubbing, filtering, etc. Then you load it, you push it out for analysis to happen. That's the exact same thing that Power Query allows us to do. It's also the same tool that's used in Power BI. And I put this over on the left. You can see some information on installing Power Query, and there's trainings for it. And that it is the same tool that's used in Power BI. So if you learn it in Excel, you know how to use it in another application, which is Power BI. So really long-winded, but I wanted to give that introduction to just say, and really hopefully emphasize, get and transform is so powerful. I worked in finance for a while, and I would spend a lot of time doing copying and pasting, shaping, scrubbing, or trying to write Visual Basic code to automate things doing just this, getting data from some source, transforming it the way I needed it so that I could move on to doing my analysis. Get and transform makes that so much simpler, so much easier, and it's super powerful for getting your own work done. So we're going to start looking at it now. I'll stop just talking up on my soapbox about how great get and transform is, and we can actually see it in action. So, like I said, we are trying to rearrange this data to see information about only our finalists. And the big requirement from the question was that we would do this with the get and transform tools so that we'd have a refreshable query. That means if our data changes, it's easy to repeat the process. In round 1, you can see back in the blog, when I did this exact same question with a different set of contestants, it was copying and paste, it was manual. If something changed, I was going to have to go back and repeat all those steps over and over again. A little bit painful. We're going to do it really fast now. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing we want to do, we'll investigate the data ribbon here, get and transform. You can see we want to create a new query. These are all the options for places where we can get data from, our starting point. So there's things like workbooks, different types of databases, Access, SQL, all types here. You can connect out to Azure or different online data sources. If you want to have fun and play around with this, you can look it up to your Facebook account and see what kind of data you can stream over from there. And this is also a changing list for folks that have the Office 365 subscription. When we build connections to new data sources, those connections appear in this list when you get your monthly subscription updates. So just another useful piece as we come up with more places to connect to, more data to connect to, our subscription customers get access to that quickly. So we're keeping it simple here, and this was for the sake of the contest. We are going to be grabbing data from a table, and that's got an easy one here. I'm going to click in our table, come back up here and say we will get it from the table. And now what's popping up is the query editor. So this is a separate window from Excel. If I pull it down here, you see my workbooks back in there. But this is all information living in our Excel file. And you see it's already grabbed the data for us. And let me just try and orient us to what we see on this screen. The main part here is your data, what you're looking at. This is a preview of what we've got. You've got a ribbon that shows you all the different actions you can take with your data. And you'll see here's a little formula bar that's actually showing you the code behind the data. That code is M language. You don't need to worry about that right now. I'll just say if you get really advanced with this tool, you can actually learn the code behind it and write some more queries yourself. But you don't ever need to learn the M code. There's so much you can do just by clicking around here, and that's what we're going to see. And so the last piece I'll orient you to is over here on the query settings. We could rename the query if we wanted it, give it some other fun name. I'll just I'll stick with let's call it the answers for data relays part 2. Let's get exact. And you don't have to have underscores. You can name it whatever you want, really long. And then the last and probably one of the most useful pieces here is the applied steps. So this is going to show all the transformations we did. The first thing, when I was in the Excel ribbon and I hit, we want to get data from a table, it created this step. We get data from our source. So automatically it assigns some specific data types to our fields here. Round number, it made a number, it identified the names as text. This is just a little bit easier to work with the data when you've assigned it a specific data type. I'm not gonna spend too much time there because we're gonna get into the transformation details. Now I'm gonna cheat and look back over at what our requirements are. I've got it listed on another page here. What we wanted to do again was to get a table where we were looking at only competitors from round 3 and where we saw all their result times from every stage of the competition. So I'm actually going to do that second part first, which is I want for each athlete a single row that's got their name, their country, and their result times for every round. We just saw in Data Relays Part 1 how we did a pivot table. You could actually think of it, if we had this data table, we'd want round numbers in the columns section of the pivot table. So then we'd see rounds 1, 2, 3 running across the top. And for each athlete, they'd have a row that's got their times for rounds 1, 2, and 3. We just did that. So I actually want to do something similar here. I want to kind of do a pivot. And that's an option here. I'm going to click round number. I'm going to go to the transform field and I'm going to say pivot column. And so that's going to say, well, what I want to do is use the names in the column round number to create new columns. And I want to populate those columns with the result time. If I click OK, you're going to see just like that. I've got round 3, round 2, round 1. And these were everyone's result times, or each competitor's result times for each of those columns. That's really fast. If you think about what I was doing before we introduced pivot tables, if we actually jump all the way back to round 1 of the competition, I would have been doing a copy and paste for each of these competitors' names to get their times for each round lined up with their name. That would have taken me a ton of time. And what did we do? We just clicked one button. And you see I got a new step here in our applied steps column, pivoted columns. And you can see you can navigate through here and step back, see what you've done, make changes. With this little settings button, I could come back in here and change how I did my pivoting. If I wanted to, I could also right click and rename it pivoted column. I could maybe give it a little bit more description and say pivoted, maybe the round number column. So now I've got for each athlete, their country, and all their times in one row. That is most of what the question is asking us to do. The last step, or the other part of it, I should say, was that we want to only be looking at people that competed in round 3. So I am going to click here, this little filter button. You can see this looks a lot like tables in Excel, pivot tables, where you get the sorting options. You've also got filtering numbers. So I could come through and check off pieces. I could say I only want people whose round 3 time was under 11 seconds if I wanted to. We're trying to do something simple. We want everyone who competed in round 3, which means we want to get rid of anyone who didn't have a round 3 score. So if I click remove empty, we are down to just the 8 competitors, our finalists, the ones who competed in round 3. Now I'm going to shuffle this around. I'd like to see round 1, round 2, then round 3, just for my own personal sake. You didn't have to do this to get the right answer in the competition. I just like to keep things sorted. I think I did this in the round 1 version of this question as well. So it's easy. Just click, drag. You see I've got another step here, reordered columns that appeared. So the last requirement we had was that we are supposed to sort these athletes now based on their performance in round 3. So the fastest person in round 3 should be at the top of the list. The slowest person should be at the bottom. And if there are any ties, they should be the tiebreaker, or the second level of sorting should be based on the round 2 time. So let's do that. I'm going to click on the round 3 arrow here. We see sort ascending as an option. It's also a button up in the home ribbon. Just for kicks, I'll use that button. You see we've got a new step, sorted rows, but we need a second step, or a second layer of filtering, right? The advanced sorting, I should say, where if there's a tie in round 3, we break that tie by then filtering, or rather sorting, with the round 2 time. So I'll sort those with round 2 sort ascending. You see the code expanded here to add this second column, round 2 sorting. And so now we have our final answer. Our winner, or our first row, has the winner of the race, person with the fastest time. They're sorted by their times. And where 2 people had the same time, they're sorted again by their second round time. So this is our answer. If I'm going to go up here, now I can do something. I can send this data somewhere. I'm going to click, rather than close and load, I'll click close and load 2 to show you some options on what actually you have here in Power Query, or get and transform as it's also called. First, we want to say where we want to load our data. So a data table means we drop the information, our end results, into somewhere on the Excel spreadsheet. Pretty self-explanatory. The other option is to create a connection, and that is we're going to save all the steps of the query, all those transformations we did, but we're not going to put that data anywhere. It's not going to be dropped into a spreadsheet. The reason you do that is you might build a few queries to be sort of builders to help you complete some final task. So I might do some transformations on one data table, have that as a connection-only query, do some transformations on another data table, create that as a connection-only query, then write a third query where I combine information from those two, and that's the actual end result I want to either drop in a spreadsheet or work with somewhere else. That's one idea. The other option is to, if you wanted to check this box and say load to data model. The data model is another great addition to modern Excel. Some people may be familiar with the term Power Pivot. That's also, lines up with the data model. It's the tool you use when you want to do detailed work with the data model. What the data model is the ability to work within Excel with tons more data. You can actually do millions of rows of data, so you can store more than just what might show up on the regular spreadsheet. You can also do complex analyses and real-time data analysis really quickly on these large data sets. So it's really, really helpful for doing some more advanced analysis or just doing quick dynamic analysis. And I'll talk more about that in later rounds. We do introduce the data model in, I believe, round 4 of the competition, so we can wait for that blog post. I'll just say another great addition and another one of those tools, just like Get and Transform, that's shared with Power BI. So if you learn how to use it in Excel, you'll know how to use it in Power BI and just be a pro at 2 products there. So I'm going to, in our case, use a data table because that's what we were required to do in the question, and say we want to load that data to an existing worksheet. And I'll just click there and load to our response section, again, per the instructions of the worksheet. If I click OK and hit load, you are going to see our answers. That was the final answer to the part 2 of the data relays. The other things I want to point out here is you see over on the right, the workbook queries pane showed up. That's just showing us that we did some of these get and transform queries in our workbook. Under the data ribbon, you could click here, show queries, to make it disappear or bring it back. Something really useful is you can go back and change your query. If I clicked edit, I'd pop and open that query editor again, and we could make modifications. So if you find out you did something wrong, it's not hard to go back and fix it. Another great thing here, just to show you here, what if our data changes? Let's say Elaine here, our winner, she won the whole competition. What if this time was actually, rather than 10.7, what if it was 12 seconds, right? If this was our data set now and we wanted to accomplish the same tasks as the question laid out, what would be our options for doing this, right? If we had done this like we did in round 1 of the competition, we'd be copying and pasting over and over again. It would be really painful to have gone through all these detailed steps and then only have to find out you need to do it again. I said it was okay in round 1 because we knew our data wasn't going to change. We weren't going to have to do it again, so we'll risk it. Now our data's changed. What do? Well, with Get and Transform, it's really easy, right? This is the results of our query. We just rerun the query. I'm going to right-click and refresh. Elaine drops down to the bottom here. You see her 12-second time, and someone else rises up to the top. Why did that happen? Because what the query is doing is literally going through all those steps again. We recorded the steps of getting data from the data table, pivoting the columns, reordering them, and then sorting them based on people's time. So all those steps were just repeated, just like you would have done in the copy-paste world, except you don't actually have to do them yourself. It's all recorded, so you just come over, click refresh, get it back. And so I want to make sure I put that back, give Elaine her props as the gold medal winner. 10.7, click refresh again, and she goes back up to the top, back to our correct final answer. So that is just another great reason to start working with the Get and Transform tools. Makes it really easy to repeat things you've done, right? So you don't spend time doing the same thing over and over again. And I'll just point out, it cuts out a lot of the risk. Our query goes into the original data source, pulls out the information it needs, and does all of our systematic transformations. You cut out the risk of a human coming in and doing a bunch of copy paste or whatever else they might do, which might involve accidentally typing over someone's name, mistyping a time, or doing copy and paste and getting different rows misaligned. All kinds of things can go wrong when there are lots of manual steps involved. By having this automated and easily refreshable, you cut out a lot of that risk, right? So just another great reason. Really encourage everyone to go out there, explore Get and Transform, check out the training, install it if you don't have it. Really, really powerful tool that can save you a lot of time as you get more comfortable with it. As we get into further and further along in these posts and we look at later rounds of the competition, you'll see there's a lot more advanced stuff you do. I'm just scratching the surface here, and even in the later rounds, we're just getting a little bit deeper It's super powerful and so much you can do with it. I really encourage you to go out and learn it and hopefully love it as much as I do. Thanks.